if you're going to do a 160-page, year-long investigation into a police department, words and facts matter. Honestly, when I saw the video and I heard the story, I was aghast.
To me, being a police officer anywhere, but particularly in a city like Chicago, I mean, what an honor. These are the ones you looked up to. These are the ones you said thank you to when you're walking down the street.
It doesn't mean we're perfect, and bad things are going to happen in bad places with bad people, and sometimes, we make mistakes. Data-driven policing. We didn't lock up everybody. It's about locking up the right person at the right place at the right time for the right reason. Deploying your resources across that. I wonder if anybody who was involved in this actually was a police officer. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Wearing the Badge. I'm Gary McCarthy. Our guest tonight is my buddy, Pat Brady. Pat has a great background. He was a state's attorney. He was a U.S. attorney, right? Mm-hmm. And he was also chairman for the Illinois Republican Party, which I think is akin to being a fire hydrant in a dog pound.
Yeah, it was pretty good. But we got those Democrats right where we want them. They're getting cocky.
That's what Chesty Pullett said at Chosen Reservoir. We could shoot in any direction and hit the enemy.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're going to talk tonight about the investigation by the United States Department of Justice Civil Rights Division into the Chicago Police Department in the post-Laquan McDonald world. So before we do that, Pat, just tell us a little bit more about yourself, fill in some blanks for us.
Well, like I said, I came up here after law school in '87, worked in the state's attorney's office, then I worked to the Justice Department in Washington, D.C., where I did white-collar financial crimes and public corruption. And then I ended up coming back and doing another tour in the state's attorney. So I was a prosecutor for almost 10 years. And then in the private sector, I was a partner at a couple consulting firms where we did these complex financial investigations. So almost 20 years of doing investigations and 10 in law enforcement. But even then, we worked hand in hand with law enforcement and doing investigations. So
interesting. I never got into investigations. I didn't have time. I got promoted too quickly, and I was
you were a street crime guy, right? I mean, you were reactive. I started out that way, then got into the historical crimes.
Sure.
So it was a different way of going about things, but you were all reactive, like you were just trying to stay ahead of the game, right?
Yeah, kind of. But my brother Jimmy was with the New York State Police, and he went to the DEA task force in New York City, and he worked in something called the El Dorado Task Force, and he did the chasing the money thing.
Oh, the money laundering. Yeah, I did some of that. Yeah,
so when he left the state police, he was set up for his next career, which was pretty good for him.
Yeah, especially in New York back in the 90s when they really started cracking down on money laundering, the bunch of new laws and in the federal scheme, the sentencing guidelines back when those were dictated what sentence you got, money laundering started at a very high level.
Sure.
Whereas a white collar, as you know, started out pretty low unless it was a huge amount of money. So I actually added money laundering to white collar crime cases just to get those elevators. So, but that I'm sure he has a very good career because that was a hot.
Oh yeah, no, he did great. He worked all over the country. He ended up in all different places as different banks moved from place to place.
Well, it's still big. I mean, after 9/11, it got even more prominent. It's because of the asset tracing capabilities, and it's because they'll do that.
Absolutely. So I got to tell you something. I read this in 2017, right after it was issued. And I got to tell you, back then it kind of made me ill, if you will. And doing it again over the last week or so to refresh my recollection of some of my thoughts, it did it again. So I'm not feeling so hot about doing this, but maybe it'll be a little cathartic. Who knows? So this basically came out of the Laquan McDonald shooting. And just to refresh everybody's recollection, in October of 2014, everybody's seen the video. Laquan McDonald was shot by Jason Van Dyke 16 times. And just to be clear, even though in here it says these things did not happen, I implemented a policy of anytime there was a police-related shooting, we had an executive staff meeting Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and wherever that shooting fell in, we would get a briefing on the shooting.
Right.
So we had facts. And in this case, it happened on a Monday night. So the first time we had the next executive staff meeting was on Wednesday. I got a phone call that we had shot a young man with a knife on the south side. And that was pretty much all the details we had. And a lot of people don't understand that the first 3 reports from the scene are generally wrong,
Right.
right?
Everybody's roaming around trying to figure out.
That played a big role in what happened with the fallout from this investigation because too many stories are out there.
Dark.
Yeah. And then, but here's the bottom line. I tell the mayor about that at 6 o'clock on Tuesday morning because he called me every morning, 6 a.m., whether something was going on or not. And that was really the end of it until Wednesday when I saw the video. And honestly, when I saw the video and I heard the story, I was aghast. And I said, "How many shots did he fire?" Because, as we all know, there was no audio on the dash cam, so we didn't know. And when they said 16, I exploded. I just simply exploded, and I probably cursed. And I actually said, "You mean he didn't even save one for himself in case he got captured?" Right? And left that meeting. I called the mayor right away and I told him we had a problem. And that's where it started. From that, Ram is involved in his reelection campaign, is in a runoff against Chuy Garcia.
Remember it well. Yeah.
And at the end of March of 2015 now, the family approaches the city, doesn't file a lawsuit, gets an agreement from the Corporation Council that he would get them $5 million and they were not going to release any evidence in the case. What am I referring to? The video. So what happens? He puts it in front of the city council, finance committee. This happens at the end of March. And by March 13th, they have an agreement and it's done, which I believe is the day after the runoff with Chuy Garcia. Big coincidences in Chicago. I noticed that.
Yeah.
Right.
Politics is a funny business.
Yeah. So the video is sealed on the civil side. People don't understand that as the police superintendent, I can't fire a police officer.
Right.
I can only make a recommendation to the police board, which is a 9-person civilian board who, believe it or not, for the first couple of years that I was superintendent, denied 3/4 of my termination recommendations. So I'm trying to fire bad cops, and the way the system is set up, I have to report to them. They're not letting me fire bad cops. So that's first of all. But the second thing that people don't understand, and this document confuses it more than anything, there was an organization called IPRA, which they changed the name to COPA. So now they're much better at their jobs because they got a different name. It's a whole different animal. They investigate police uses of force in the city of Chicago. We, as the Chicago police, do not investigate our own uses of force, including police shootings. That's done by IPRA, now COPA. So the short story is, right now, Larry Snelling, as the police superintendent, is in the same position, but they added 4 or 5 more layers of civilian accountability above him.
Right.
So I want you to think about the fact that in this case, I had accountability for everybody's actions, but I didn't have the authority to discipline them.
But you did initially.
Well, I stripped them.
You stripped him right away.
But that's all I could do.
Right.
I could, and
So what
strip
if he
it.
just sits at a desk? Is that what
He
happens?
sits at a desk, can't go on the street, but he's still getting paid.
So I'm sorry, on the chronology of it. So that video sits for a year, right?
The video sat until November. So yeah, it was a little over a year. The shooting happens in October. Video sits until November, when some activists go to court and get a judge to order the unsealing of it. So,
And that was like on a Friday night, right? There was a big, people were waiting for that to come out, right?
well, he orders the unsealing by, I think it was November 25th,
Right before Thanksgiving. I mean,
right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, or Thanksgiving week was it?
Yeah, Thanksgiving week. So it's released on the 25th, and the fallout starts. And the fallout is protests, people, 16 shots, and a cover-up.
So it was a public interest group that went, FOIA'd it, and got it released, even notwithstanding the agreement with the city on a non-disclosure or whatever that would be
Correct.
called.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's how it came out, like you said, 13 months later.
So just to be clear, the entirety of that cover-up took place by the Corporation Council getting that video sealed in a civil agreement with the family.
And in 2 weeks, right? I mean, it happened quickly. That they
Shooting,
that
within,
they had
within
that.
2 weeks. He had the agreement. And by the way, I have the notes from the City Council Finance Committee where he described every officer's action. And
Had the state's attorney, was Anita Alvarez at the time, I think.
correct.
Had she started an investigation into the
She impaneled the grand jury, as did Zach Farden, who is the U.S. attorney.
right?
Okay. He describes every officer's actions on the video and tells the City Council Finance Committee that they have an agreement that they would give them $5 million without filing a lawsuit. Okay. There's no suit filed.
Right. Well, that's it. So they lawyered up,
Right.
went in and said, "Hey, we've got this."
Correct.
Had they seen the video?
No,
So nobody had seen it really.
I'm not sure if they sort of,
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. But what I do know is Gary McCarthy didn't seal it.
Right. Yeah.
So the unsealing happened by a judge. So
I mean, even you didn't have at that point, you couldn't say, "Hey, I don't want that sealed," right? You had
there was nothing I could do about it.
Yeah.
I'm not investigating it.
Right.
I can't fire Van.
You're certainly not going to settle it civilly, right? That's
not going to settle it civilly. And I know not to interfere with an investigation that's being done by the U.S. attorney.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, that's a big problem, right?
That's we never liked that.
Yeah. So I'm basically sitting and watching what's going on. Short story. Rom calls me in on December 1st, and I'll cut to the chase. I had done early morning press where I bounce around to different.
I did the show with you. We were on
Which one?
Steve Cochran.
Oh yeah, on the radio.
On the radio. We were on the radio.
You were on the radio when I got fired.
I think I was the last media hit you did that day before you. I for some reason I remember you saying, "Hey, had I go to see the mayor?"
I got to go get fired.
Oh, he didn't say that. He just said you.
Oh, that's what I told my driver. Yeah. So I go to see Rom, and he asked me to resign, and I told him no, and he said, "No, you don't understand." And goes through a whole soliloquy about, in the best interest of the city. And I said, "No, you don't understand. No." Short story is, he says, "Well, I want to tell people that we came to this decision together." And I said, "We haven't."
On the firing, not the,
On the
or
resignation.
resignation. Excuse me.
Yeah. Get
Sorry.
that?
Yeah, I know. You're right. Words are important.
Words are important.
They are.
And the reason why I tell this part of the story is because I left his office and nothing happened except for the fact that I was getting phone calls from his chief of staff virtually every day saying, "Okay, you're going to resign, right?" And I was like, no, please stop calling me. I'm not resigning. We had an almost 70% reduction in police-related shootings.
That's a huge number.
Which, if you read this document, you would think that the only reason that we stopped shooting was because we ran out of ammunition. Data-driven policing. We didn't lock up everybody. It's about locking up the right person at the right place, at the right time, for the right reason. Deploying your resources across that. I wonder if anybody who was involved in this actually was a police officer.
Were they just looking for a head? I mean, the resignation, I mean, that quickly, is it just like somebody's going to have to be accountable, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to, whatever the facts are.
I think it's called covering one's ass.
I'm familiar with that term.
So yeah, look at the squirrel, right?
Yeah.
Look at the squirrel. Everybody forgot about the election.
Right.
And On December 17th, Franz Fielman from the Star Ledger,
Sometimes.
Sun-Times, I'm sorry, Star Ledger's Newark.
Yeah, as I say. It's a New York thing. It's a different language.
Newark, not New York.
Same thing.
Files a FOIA request for my letter of resignation, which doesn't exist. And I get another phone call from his chief of staff who says, all right, would you like a letter of termination? And I said, no, but if that's what you choose to do, so be it. And she sent me a letter of resignation. Now I bring that
Does
up.
the mayor have the authority to terminate the superintendent?
I believe so.
They do? Okay.
I asked some people in the know.
Yeah.
Well, actually, my question is, does the mayor's chief of staff have the authority to terminate the police superintendent?
Yeah, well, you know, she's just taking orders, I'm assuming. But yeah, I just always I thought it might have been a more involved process.
I bring that up because it was reported on that day that the mayor asked for and received my letter of resignation, which is on the first page of this document.
Right.
Now, I'm sorry. If you
It's still reported that. If you Google it or chat or whatever.
It says, did I resign?
Yeah.
Yeah, which didn't happen.
Yeah.
I bring that up because it's on the first page of this document. And, you know, if you're going to do a 160-page, year-long investigation into a police department, words and facts matter, don't they?
Yeah.
And the two press things that came out on December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day.
Was that the St. Pat's party?
No, I don't think so.
Was that the one where you got the standing ovation?
Oh, that
was right around then, wasn't it?
no, that was the March one. That was the same.
Oh, wasn't the Christmas one? Okay.
No, it wasn't a Christmas one.
That was my first St. Pat's party.
Is that right? It was my favorite.
Pat Brady and Gary McCarthy.
Why am I listening to you? So I bring it up because it's on the first page here. And, you know, on December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day, Loretta Lynch came to Chicago and announced that they were going to conduct the investigation into the policies and practices of the Chicago Police Department.
Which that comes out of the Civil Rights Division, which is different than the criminal kind of investigations that you and I were used to doing. This is, they can get information from credible sources and get it from news media, and then it has to go, they have to make like a preliminary finding within the Justice Department, and then they announce the investigation, and then they move forward. But it's not to be confused with a federal criminal investigation. This is a civil, like you said, practices and procedures investigation, which is different.
Sure. So, I mean, Pat can see it from here, but I have marked this thing up like John Madden used to do with football plays. And it's just over and over again. There is broad brush strokes of articulation that are not backed up by any facts anywhere.
Yeah, it's pretty thin for supposedly interviewing thousands of people. You'd think that'd be about 1,000 pages long.
I don't think that I would have submitted a college term paper like this without more documentation.
Let me just ask you about this. When I read it too recently, I just read it when we spoke a couple of weeks ago. So I read through all this, and typically in an investigative report, either the hundreds that I've done, at the end you get all your evidence, you get everything, and this you're getting witness interviews, you're getting body cam, it's kind of almost a data dump too, right? You're getting information on arrests and blah blah blah. But what amazed me here, and I think this happened in another report, they never talked to you.
No.
Weren't you police superintendent?
I think I was the guy who created the policies and practices that were in place at the time.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, no, I'm sure I did, yeah.
So you're nowhere.
No.
That's what struck me initially when I read this. I go, well, they never got a statement from
No.
the guy. It's like, it'd be like doing a white collar investigation and CEOs never would talk to you. But that's the person you want to talk to the most is the guy making the decisions.
Right. And you would do that after you already got all your evidence together.
Exactly.
Okay, so after, I'll skip to the end and then come back. When Loretta Lynch comes back to Chicago.
Okay, so Loretta Lynch is the Attorney General
of the United
States, a Democrat. She's working for,
Obama.
It would be an Obama. So she's in the last 2 years of Obama's.
Right.
Yeah.
And right before Trump takes office, she comes to Chicago to release this.
Right.
which, the press came to me when they announced that they were coming the first time before the investigation, and they said, what do you think they're going to find? I said, they're going to find systemic racism, poor supervision, and poor training. And she said, well, why do you think that? I said, because that's what they found in the other 25 investigations that they did in the last 8 years.
But some of this stuff too, if my history's right, you'd kind of blown the whistle in a productive way of, we do have some issues that we need to do. I mean, we're a large police forces.
Yeah.
Love them all, but they're far from perfect, and there's some things we need to do differently. That's kind of why you were brought in, right?
I believe so. Yeah. I think some might even call me an expert on this stuff. I don't know.
I would think, yeah.
But my question is, and they reference experts here, law enforcement experts. Who are you talking about?
Right.
None of my friends, and I was the vice president of the Major City Chiefs Association. I'm still a lifetime member. None of my friends participated in this. So I don't know who it was. And the short story is, I believe that this is basically cut and pasted
From the other ones?
from the other one.
Yeah, it looks like the other ones.
And they say the same things. But, what I can't get over.
Is the end game here for them to get the consent decree so they can come in and run the...
Well,
the
that
department?
might be the case. That might be the case.
Because they didn't in this case, right? Trump came in and said,
No, there's a consent decree.
but initially didn't Sessions throw it out?
I
There was a
don't-
delay in it. Anyway.
I really
yeah.
don't recall because I had my head in the sand at that point.
Yeah.
I was trying to hide from all of this. But I just I have to read from this because what's in here, what this tells me is they make their conclusions, they come to the city, they take testimony, and they say, aha, we knew it.
Right.
Without
It's like one of those Senate hearings or House hearings.
without facts to back it up. Right. There are virtually no statistics in here, except for some cherry-picked ones. And what I still find disturbing is that during my 5-year tenure in CPD, every year we had crime reduction.
As I say, crime down.
We had the 2 lowest murder rates since 1965 in 2013 and 2014. We had an almost 70% reduction in police-related shootings.
That's a huge number.
Which, if you read this document, you would think that the only reason that we stopped shooting was because we ran out of ammunition.
Well,
Wait. We got huge reductions in complaints against our officers. And at the same time, we did that by making about 30,000 less arrests. Now, the way that modern policing runs, or was running back then, I'm not positive if this is the case across the country, is I looked at it as business management. I got trained in business management by the NYPD at Columbia University. And no, it wasn't on campus. I didn't go in a tent or anything. I knew you were going to go there.
I had about 10 jokes I was going to lay into you. I thought I saw you protesting.
And the bottom line is you look at what is it that we want to do. And I think those 5 outcomes that I just mentioned are exactly what we want to do.
Right.
And we did it consistently every year. It went down and down and down. And all of a sudden, this comes and pulls the rug out from underneath us. And here's the justification. I'm sorry, but I have to read this. CPD engages in a pattern or practice of unconstitutional use of force. Okay? That's the title here. We reviewed CPD's force practices, mindful that officers routinely place themselves in harm's way, yada, yada, yada. We love the police, blah, blah, blah. Nevertheless, we found reasonable cause to believe that CPD has engaged in a pattern or practice of unreasonable force in violation of the Fourth Amendment, and that deficiencies in CPD's training, supervision, and accountability. How did I get that right? How did I know that was going to be in there?
Well, the reasonable, it's not like conclusive or based on these facts or...
Here's the follow-up. Although a specific number of incidents and statistical evidence is not required, why isn't evidence required?
Good question.
Our investigation found that CPD officers use unnecessary and unreasonable force in violation of the Constitution with frequency.
So, say I'm Loretta Lynch. Imagine for a second. and I'm interviewing you. It asking you questions. What would you say to her? I'm sitting down. I'm interviewing Gary McCarthy about all this stuff. What would you say to her?
I would say, okay, I've got 2 boxes in my office full of documents that are directives, policies, directions, and orders of everything we did to get to those numbers. It didn't happen by accident. Right? It didn't happen because I appeared here. It happened because we came here with a plan, tried and true, that we used in New York, we used it in Newark, and guess what? We made it Newark-centric in Newark, and we made it Chicago-centric here. Data-driven policing. We didn't lock up everybody. It's about locking up the right person at the right place, at the right time, for the right reason. Deploying your resources across that. I wonder if anybody who was involved in this actually was a police officer. Just hear this for 1 second.
Sure.
One of the first things I did when I walked through the door was I looked.
Well, I guarantee none of these guys that wrote this are police officers. They're all civil lawyers from the Justice Department. They're not. Some of them I might have been at one time, but they're certainly not.
They love using the word community policing.
Yeah, that's been around for a while.
Yeah, they don't know what it means. Nobody knows what it means, right? But I could tell you how to implement community policing. When I got here, I said that we had 3 different police departments. We had the I-duty enforcement police, which were these big task forces that roamed around the city. They were on the south side, west side, downtown, on the beaches, wherever we need them at that time. No connection to the community, okay? We had the I make people feel good police, and that was CAPS, okay?
Yep.
And
that'd been around for a while, right?
Yeah. And we had the I answer the radio police. Because we had these big task forces, we took all the cops out of the districts. So all those cops could do is run from job to job to job.
So no community awareness or relationships, just
no geographic accountability either. Geographic.
So you could be in one Inglewood and then somewhere else.
Yeah. And here's another thing.
Geographic accountability meaning
same beat,
stats.
Same beat every day.
So
Brady and McCarthy.
Things are going well here because things are calm.
We know the 5 kids coming from basketball practice versus the 5 kids who were always standing on that corner.
Right.
Okay. So that's important. We broke up the task forces. The place, it was a seismic change. And yet they're talking about somebody has to determine how to redeploy the resources to make it work better. Like, we did that as soon as we walked through the door.
Right.
I eliminated the top rank of the department, moved them down to chiefs. We streamlined the whole thing. We consolidated 4 districts into 2.
I remember that.
We made 5 detective areas into 3. We made patrol into 3 areas, north, south, central. And they aligned with each other with narcotics and gang and all the other units that were working. That's how you create community policing. Same cops, same beat, every day, handling jobs there. That's challenged by another systems failure, which is not identified here, which is the dispatchers don't work for the police department. They work for OEMC. And you know what their motivation is? Clean screen.
Right.
I want to get the jobs off the screen.
Right.
So you and I are working on the south side. They got a job up in the north. It's not a priority, but they send us. It takes us 20 minutes to get there, 20 minutes to handle it, 20 minutes to come back. That's an hour out of our beat for a non-priority call. They don't talk about that.
Right.
Creating efficiencies in the department, supervision, training. We created a procedural justice training course run by Tom Tyler and Tracy Mears, both Yale University professors who came here and helped us develop this program that we trained every officer in the department in this procedural justice, which means that you treat people with respect. And in the end, the crustiest hardcore cop said, yeah, I already knew that, but yeah, that was good training, right? Yeah. The Department of Justice, different part, not the civil, actually was bringing police chiefs from across the country to Chicago to learn what we were doing to take it back to their jurisdictions, learning a train-the-trainer on this procedural justice training and bringing it back to their departments. So We had something called the Chicago Plan, where we detailed and outlined everything that we did. I created the position of chief of crime control strategies for Bob Tracy, who came from New York, went to Wilmington, Delaware after I got fired, now is in St. Louis. Everywhere he's gone, he's succeeding using the Chicago Plan that we created here.
To me, being a police officer anywhere, but particularly in a city like Chicago, and for you, New York and Newark, I mean, what an honor. These are the ones you looked up to. These are the ones you said thank you to when you're walking down the street.
And the press asked you if you interviewed Gary McCarthy, and you replied, "We tried to interview Mr. McCarthy, but he was unavailable." The press naturally came to me and said, "Is that true?" And I couldn't help myself, being a wise guy, and I said, "You mean with all the investigative resources of the federal government, you couldn't find me right here in River North?" They don't talk about something in here called CompStat.
Right.
CompStat is where commanders have to get up and pretty much defend their dissertation. And we look at every metric that you can think of, including complaints against officers, where they say in here that we did nothing about it. Patently false. They don't say that they looked at CompStat notes, which is where all the directions came from. So, Loretta, I would tell you, first of all, when you came here,
I'm blushing.
when you came here on January 13th of 2017, and the press asked you if you interviewed Gary McCarthy, and you replied, "We tried to interview Mr. McCarthy, but he was unavailable." The press naturally came to me and said, "Is that true?" And I couldn't help myself, being a wise guy, and I said, "You mean with all the investigative resources of the federal government, you couldn't find me right here in River North?" So, Loretta,
They could find you if you didn't pay your taxes.
not only did you would find me.
I'd find you, exactly.
Not only would I tell you that, but I would tell you I never left and I'm still here. And what this has done to policing in this city is abhorrent. And I mean, I could do a 3-hour show on this.
Well, even just as a civilian, when all this went down, obviously an observer, and I scanned the executive summary when it came out, and to me, the damage that I think you just mentioned is that being a police officer anywhere, but particularly in a city like Chicago, and for you, New York and Newark, I mean, what an honor. These are the ones you looked up to. These are the ones you said thank you to when you're walking down the street. This began, I think, the police are bad, and you can't hire police anymore. I mean, and then the saddest part of all that in this cycle, which drives me crazy, is you go down Michigan Avenue and there's a huge police presence, and you look at them, 27, 28, 29, every color, every gen, everybody. This is a police force that we should always be proud of, and they're still fighting stuff that was in there, which I take you at your word because I read it too, based on not really investigating it, but based on, I suspect, more of a political agenda than anything. But the damage it's done to law enforcement, I think we're finally starting to recover from it.
You want to hear about some damage?
Yeah.
Between 2014 and 2016, the murder rate went from 419, where we almost broke 400 going down, to 773. 354 more people got killed over that time frame.
God, that 440 is a low number, because I remember some years when
419
back in the day when it was in
900.
well, even before 35 years ago, it was almost double that. Too. Well, did Kim Fox help that along, though, right?
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother
story. Have me back for that one.
But, and then they talk about morale is down for these officers. Well, one of the things, and I don't want to sound like I'm taking credit for this, but it's a fact. Leadership matters. I would go on patrol every Friday or Saturday night, and I would go to the south side, the west side, and come downtown. I didn't go to the nice places. And, my best conversations with cops were on street corners in Englewood at 4 o'clock in the morning, or West Lawndale at 5 o'clock in the morning when the sun's coming up. They're like, boss, what? I remember pulling up to car stops. They're doing a car stop, pull up, get out of the car, and they turn and wave like everything's cool. Then they realize it's me. They're like, hey, boss. And I'm like, will you pay attention? We'll talk after the car stop. Let's get through this phase. But we had the plan. We have the orders. It's all written down, by the way. All she had to do was ask me.
Right.
All you had to do, Loretta, was ask me. Yeah. And I would have given
I get nervous around you, Gary.
Some people do. And I kind of understand it. But I would have given them boxes. And I would have said, here, start here. Sit down and read this stuff. And then let's talk about it. That's what I would have done. How do you get those metrics all going in the same direction? It's not by accident.
Well, you can make these say whatever you want them to say.
You can indict a hand sandwich, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
But here's the other part. And I don't mean to be critical of the federal system in general, but do you remember the results of the federal grand jury?
In this case?
Yeah. In the Laquan McDonald shooting.
They didn't. They chose not to prosecute, right?
They declined prosecution in 2022, 8 years after the incident.
Yeah.
8 years after the incident. So
how quickly, when did he come to trial?
I think he was already done with trial. I don't remember.
Yeah.
You got to realize that once this happened, and that happened to me, where I was left with no way to feed my family. I'm a cop for 35 years. I've achieved pretty well. I had a pretty good career. I tell everybody the same thing. In a pretty good career, I'm most proud that I wore my father's shield when I'm a police officer.
Good for you.
So I kind of like tried to stay out of it. But the fact is that besides what it says, the way it was put together was with the blessing of the Corporation Counsel, the guy who orchestrated the cover-up of the video.
Right.
So as I'm thinking about...
They were working with Corp Counsel on this?
Yes.
Interesting.
As I
Not quite objective.
talk about a fox in a hen house.
Well, I don't know. Have never done one of those, but I would think that would be something. If I were representing you, I'd be asking if this is truly independent.
Right.
It needs to be independent. But I guess they got to interview everybody
except
you.
I'm sure, of course, but I'm certain that there's a reason why it's muddled when you're talking about the difference between IPRA and CPD. It says that CPD. It actually says CPD does not adequately investigate their use of force. You're right. We don't do it at all because that's up to IPRA.
Right.
So
didn't you say too that even when they're investigated, they have to have verified or
they needed an affidavit.
And
to file a complaint. That's been overturned. We also had 3 programs on the Safety Act, which is a whole nother monster, but we got to fix a lot of stuff in that. But the damage that this stuff does, and if you think about it, 26 investigations over the course of 8 years. And to my knowledge, the only difference between the 26 investigations was that when they investigated the Puerto Rican police, they found that they were discriminating against Dominicans. I mean, come on. It's cut and pasted. And,
well, it's in if you look at the manual, the DOJ manual, that's one of the, 4 or 5 things that would trigger an investigation. That boilerplate language that you just, when you read that, I'm like, well, that's in the U.S. Attorney's Manual.
Well, isn't that interesting? Yeah. But where I was going with the leadership thing is that, we brought a sea change to the CPD. And, I was worried about, if you turn a ship too quickly, you could flip it over. Right. And I mean, I remember standing in an auditorium with 400 cops from these two task forces. And I personally explained to them why I was disbanding the task forces and that these guys were primarily going to precincts. They were going to be smaller groups that remained at the area level so that if the deputy chief has a hot spot, like for instance, I pointed out 82nd and Drexel, where Officer Rivera got shot, unfortunately, by a partner, that whole area right around there by Father Flaga's church is on fire.
Right. And
the area deputy chief has resources to drop into the 6th district and help out with stuff like that. So I told them personally, right? And there were a lot of grumbling, a lot of unhappy people. We came around. Everybody ended up buying into what we were doing. The momentum was there. And in the police department, there's always a couple of guys in the back of the room saying, don't do it, kid. They're going to get you.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Well, guess what? As soon as my legs got cut out from underneath me, that's exactly what they said. It was articulated on the 5th floor, 35th Street, that we're not doing that New York shit anymore. We're doing all these things that we're getting those results. It doesn't mean we're perfect. And bad things are going to happen in bad places with bad people. And sometimes, we make mistakes. Words that keep coming up in here is rebuilding trust. You can't rebuild something that doesn't exist in the first place. They took feelings, right? They're talking to people, cop shoots your brother. You don't like cops after that, I'm sure, right?
We know there's a lot of bad history.
Yeah.
It's not.
And by the way, if every police shooting that occurred during my tenure was a bad one, it represented 0.5% of the shootings in the city of Chicago.
I remember Kim Fox ran on all you guys are liars.
Yeah.
And then, I didn't see anybody get convicted the entire time she was there, ever, of that.
Yeah.
And I think they had 9 or 10 cases they filed, and I think they were all acquittals.
Yeah. And then beyond that, the cost of this. There's a cottage industry that's been created for the monitors. And I want you to think about this. The monitor, with the consent decree now, decides when there's substantial compliance.
Right.
And when there's substantial compliance, the monitor's out of a job.
Right. Right.
Because you don't need me anymore.
That whole monitorship thing, it applies obviously in that context, but there are several other kind of monitorships, and they're total boondoggles.
Yeah. And think about this. And I don't know.
Who funds the monitorship? Is that a tax thing, or is that
the city?
The city funds it.
Yeah. And nice. I don't know what the overall number is, but I found out that between 20 and 24, the city apportioned $667 million to fulfill the consent decree. Wow. Now, mind you, 2 other things that I just got to put on.
So would that include the consent decree says you're going to do X, Y, Z?
Yes.
Under our purview?
Yes.
So the superintendent has to report to the monitor?
Well, the department reports to the monitor. I'm sure it's not the superintendent. Sometimes I'm sure that there's conversations, but I would suspect there was an assistant chief who was doing it that I know of. But there's 2 other things that I got to point to. There's something called CALEA accreditation, and I forget what CALEA stands for. But it's law enforcement accreditation. It's a national standard that's very difficult to get. And we started the accreditation process, and what it does is it gives you the gold standard. It gives you the seal of approval for the gold standard for your policies and procedures. Okay?
Right.
Chicago just finished, like 2 years ago, the accreditation process that I started. By the way, the other thing that's in here that's patently false is they started using body-worn cameras in 2016. Well, in 2016, I wasn't employed, and I know I started the body-worn camera program.
Right.
Just a little aside.
Yeah, because that was that was before. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So the accreditation process, Chicago PD is now the largest department in the country with CALIA accreditation, the gold standard for your policies and procedures. If that's the case, why is there still a monitor and why is there still a consent decree? Right? That makes no sense. But one other thing. In 2013, President Obama started something called the 21st Century Task Force on Policing. And what he did was he knighted this concept, and they put together a task force of criminologists, police leadership, lawyers, sociologists, all diverse backgrounds, and they went around the country collecting best practices. When they issued their report, which I believe came out in 2014, I might be wrong, we were compliant with 93% of their recommendations. Okay, this is done by the administration.
Right.
93%, and the other 7% was
The same administration that did that.
same administration.
Yeah.
And the other 7% was either not within the law of Illinois or a contractual agreement that they couldn't do it. So think about that. Accreditation gives you the policies and the procedures, which we were undergoing. 21st Century Task Force gives you the best policies and practices from the smartest people across the country. And mind you, not every one of our crime control strategies was enforcement-based. We had something called the Violence Reduction Network, which came out of John Jay College in New York City with a very interesting guy, David Kennedy, professor there. And it has to do with pulling levers. And we talked about this with Reverend Cory Booker. He's using it because he came to these meetings that we were doing with parolees, which resulted in...
Still sleeping on the roof down there?
No, he's going to take another walk across the country starting September 1st, though.
He used to do that roof.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, go, Corey.
That's why I first met him. He was up on the roof, and I had to go see it. I was like, hey, Rev, how you doing?
It's cold. It rains here.
Why don't you come on up here, Soup? I was like, I'm good down there. Thanks.
I don't like roofs.
Yeah. But so we're doing all these things, so we're getting those results. It doesn't mean we're perfect. And bad things are going to happen in bad places with bad people. Yeah. And sometimes, we make mistakes. So, and here's something else I just got to get out. One of the bases that DOJ was using systemic racism against police officers has to do with, quote unquote, stop and frisk. Okay? Well, as you know, Terry versus Ohio, 1968, says that the police can stop somebody based upon articulable, reasonable suspicion. But the standard has now been switched to population demographics. So if we're not stopping 30% white guys in Englewood, we're outside of the policy.
Right.
But that would be unconstitutional if we stop people based upon something other than articulable, reasonable suspicion. But that's the standard that the departments across the country are being held to. What are we supposed to do? Accreditation means nothing. Terry versus Ohio means nothing, right? President's 21st Century Task Force means nothing.
I think, though, to put a bright spinner, I think that the pendulum's coming.
Yeah, I'm getting myself depressed.
No, but I sincerely believe that it's coming back. That the respect that was lost because of reports like this, I think people now really are starting to appreciate what the police do.
Well, I will tell you this. Another word that's used in here over and over again, besides over, I told Pat before this that I have a problem with the fact that people use the word over. 1,000 people were interviewed. Over 340 officers. No, it's more than.
I think some nun slapped that into me when I was second grade.
That's what happened to me. Sister Mary Joseph played my head like.
Brady Roberts.
Is it funny how it doesn't go?
I never.
But at the end of the day, words that keep coming up in here is rebuilding trust. You can't rebuild something that doesn't exist in the first place. And I talked about this with Corey Brooks. And I got to tell you something. We had a very refreshing conversation, just like we always do. And I told them stories about how I would go to community meetings on the South and the West Side. And black audiences are great. They talk back to you.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you're in church. And I start talking about racism and segregation and redlining and slavery and black codes and Jim Crow and all these things. And they're getting whooped up and whooped up. And I say, but segregation is not the solution. No, that's right. But then we insist on it. And there's an audible, huh? And I say, you want black commanders and black cops in black neighborhoods. We're not going to get over this until we acknowledge the history. Stop pointing fingers at each other.
Right.
Acknowledge the history. Have reasonable conversations about how we're going to move forward. But you need exposure. And one of the things that I did that I'm really proud of, and Leo Schmitz, we talked about this a lot.
Good man.
First white guy to be the commander in Englewood since the early 60s because I put him there. And when I put him there, he goes, what did I do? I said, Leo, you're my best guy. I got to put you in my toughest place.
And they loved him out there.
They protested when he got there. There was a guy who passed away, who I'm not going to mention his name, sponsored protests in front of the district.
Well, he's told me
When we took him out,
Yeah.
they protested again because they didn't want him to leave.
Well, he's obviously mutual friend. And he's told me some stories about how the people that actually lived and were working in those communities were fully supportive of whatever he was doing. And because
But Pat, that's the same with me.
Yeah.
And I would see them when I was out at meetings and on patrol.
Yeah.
And they couldn't have been nicer.
And there's ones you never hear about. I remember even in my state's attorney days, there'd always be someone in court for the bond hearing. And it was usually a youngish woman. It was never a man coming to help. And those, they were the ones that were actually being affected by all this.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
The other thing I did was I put a black commander north of Division Street for the first time in the history of the department. And that guy led the city in crime reduction in the lowest crime district in the city, which obviously the lower the number gets, the harder they are to keep down.
Right.
So, I guess the wrap-up is pretty simple. Thank you for listening to me vent.
Yeah.
Can you still hear that? Are you right here?
No, but listen, I can empathize with your frustration, but hopefully we recover from all this. And I had the same impression when I read that. It was more of a political document than factual.
Oh, without a doubt.
And the damage it did.
And they had to get it out before Trump came.
Yeah.
Because this is right before his election.
And then the flip side of that too is just the tragedy of the whole Laquan McDonald thing. I mean, that is a bad.
That is a horrible tragedy.
Yeah.
But it's compounded by the more than 350 people who died between 2014 and 2016 who might not have died if we stayed the course.
Right.
So, sometimes you get what you want and sometimes you get unintended consequences.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing that big time. But we haven't been able to identify the problem yet. The police are not the problem.
No, and that's the drum I've been beating for the last 10. It's like almost 10 years now. I'm sick of the police being blamed for everything.
Yeah. Well, I always wrap up the show by saying something along these lines. First of all, thank you for being here.
Oh, it's an honor.
I really appreciate your time. And thank you for being a prosecutor. Having good prosecutors is...
Greatest job in the world.
Being a Chicago police superintendent was my favorite in the world.
They're two good jobs.
But
different sides of the same coin, basically.
Being in law enforcement, and particularly because we're talking about wearing a badge.
I got my kids in it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy. I couldn't imagine my kids doing it. I wouldn't.
My girls. Two of my girls. Yeah, it's kind of scary.
Well, they'll be okay.
They're pretty tough.
Yeah, they'll be okay. But being a police officer and being in law enforcement is truly one of the most noble things that a human being can do with their life. And we need to remember that. And we need to remember that the police are not the problem. And recognize that and figure out how to move forward. Because what we're doing isn't working. If it costs $667 million over those 4 years, what does it cost over the last 8 that we've been doing this consent decree? And I think the city's kind of broke.
Which is another show we can do. And you walk up around Michigan and this greatest city in the world, and why we're broke is beyond me.
Yeah. Well, thank you for watching. Stay tuned. Lots more coming.